Hello, I'm Steve, and today we'll be talking about Book 2 of the Ielts. In the previous lesson, we talked about the steps in stating opinions and facts. Now, in this lesson, we're going to discuss how to compare and contrast. Comparing and contrasting is common in Ielts Speaking Part 3. It generally requires you to describe the similarities, differences, or both between two things, places, groups, or periods of time. Familiarity with comparative adjectives is an advantage since the knowledge and proper usage of these is being measured in this type of question. In answering questions that ask you to compare and or contrast, you will need to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. An introductory sentence is needed to start your answer so that the interviewer will know what you're going to discuss. As part of your introduction, mention the degree of similarities or differences. To do so, think of the question, are there big or small differences or similarities between the subjects? Here are some words you can use to express the degree of similarities or differences. Remember to emphasize the degree of similarities or differences you use. Emphasizing is done to add more meaning to your sentences. In addition, stress only the important words for you to keep an ideal speech rate. Compare and contrast type of questions can directly ask about the differences or similarities of two things. These questions usually start with what or how. If that's the case, begin your answer with an introduction in which the degree of difference is emphasized. On the other hand, if the interviewer asks closed-ended questions, you need to answer yes or no and then give your opinion. Remember to paraphrase your interviewer's question for both types of questions to exhibit your range of lexical resources. Here are some examples. After your introduction, compare and contrast your subjects in depth. You need to provide the details or ways in which the two topics are different from or similar to each other to support your main point. There are two ways to do this. You can either describe then compare, or compare and contrast. In the first method, you describe one subject and then use a cohesive device to compare it to the second subject. Here's an example of how the method is used. The second method is to compare and contrast the subjects in different aspects. However, this method is more challenging than the first one because you need to use more comparative words and cohesive devices. Here's a sample body using this method. As exemplified earlier, you can talk about different aspects, but always with the use of cohesive devices to give direction to your answer. Use phrases of comparison or phrases of contrast to signal how exactly the two subjects are being analysed. Here are some words you can use to compare and contrast. If you're confident using adjectives, you can level it up by using adverbs such as rather, considerably, and quite to be more precise in your description. The last step is to draw a conclusion from the body of your answer. In this step, you will have to evaluate your discussion involving the subjects. To make it easier, you can think of the questions, which of the two do you think is better? Or, which of the two subjects do you prefer? It's quite similar to giving a subtle opinion about the things you have described. Here are some examples. If you don't feel like giving your opinion, you can also speculate or predict what might happen between the two subjects in the future. Here are some examples. Here is a sample answer using the steps we've just discussed. Make sure to practice using comparative adjectives and cohesive devices for you to deliver your answer fluently. That's it for lesson 2. Thank you for listening and see you next time. Goodbye.